Quadajah Johnson. They were in court today.
They were.
What happened?
A lot happened.
When people do the most, I do the analysis. Let's go. Today we're doing an update on the Quadajah Johnson case. This update follows the December 23rd status hearing, which was reported by Tia Ewing of Fox News. At the end of the hearing, there was this huge courthouse brawl that erupted between families and resulted in 3 people being escorted back into the courthouse in handcuffs by the courthouse law enforcement. Let's hear what Tia Ewing had to say about that.
Here's where it gets interesting. So our field producer who was there said that Quadajah Johnson's family was let out first, out of the courtroom, and that they lingered a little bit in the hallway. And then after that, Romeca's family was let out, but there was still leftover from supporters of Quadajah Johnson. I don't know who exchanged words with who. I'm not here to say that because I was not there to know. And even though my field producer, our field producer of Fox 32 was there, it was not clear who started the drama first. That is unknown here. What we know is words were exchanged. Some people are saying that Carlos approached the family. Okay, that's what some people are saying. Some people are, in the family being Romeca's family. Then other people are saying that it was the opposite. Okay, that it was the opposite in that the family approached Carlos or said something to Carlos. I don't know which one is true. Okay, because we're looking, the video we have is everybody going out. You can hear stuff being said, arguing back and forth. It's both sides. And the video that we have, you hear both sides. It's no indication of who kicked it off in our video from when the argument transpired in the hallways of the Layton Criminal Courthouse. Carlos is then put in handcuffs, brought back in the courthouse, and then family members of Romeca, too, one which we know for sure is a family member of Romeca or related to Romeca or known of Romeca because that person has on pink, is also brought back into the courthouse and is in handcuffs with the sheriff. The other person is unknown. So we can at least say Carlos was brought back into the courthouse, and so was a member of Romeca's family.
I decided to start out with the courthouse brawl because it may have serious implications going forward. Not on the outcome of the case itself, but the court controls and how public access to the hearings may be treated. I'll get into that a little bit more in this video. But first, let's talk about what happened inside the courtroom on December 23rd. Charged with first-degree murder, Quadajah Johnson was present in court. She entered a not guilty plea because she believes her actions were in self-defense and that she was legally licensed to end the life of Romeca Blackmon. Well, the judge made several decisions that significantly shape what happens next. But I want to focus specifically on 3 key things. What a status hearing actually is and what it's not, why it may be premature for a defense counsel to seek a plea deal at this stage, and what this means for Quadajah Johnson's chance of being released on bond headed into her next court date on January 7th. Let's walk through this carefully. According to Fox News reporting, Quadajah Johnson and her team of lawyers appeared in court on December 23rd and formally entered a not guilty plea to the charges made against her. Tia, tell us what you know about this.
So in court today, what transpired was, again, Quadajah Johnson's attorneys, they argued for her to, essentially, they were pressing for her to be let out. Rightfully so. They can do that. That is their legal right to do that. She is pregnant. Prior to this, she did not have a lengthy criminal history. In fact, she had one thing that was a misdemeanor, so not even worth talking about. I mean, it was nothing on her record prior to this. So from a legal standpoint, that is something that an attorney will argue. That attorney would then argue that my client is not a flight risk. My client has never, felt the need, and she had a CCW. She was a concealed carry holder, and there is nothing that indicates that she had fired that weapon at someone or pulled out her gun to shoot and kill someone, allegedly, because we don't know everything unfolded. We're seeing the aftermath video, okay? So prior to that, based on what we know, There's nothing that showed that in her history. So an attorney is obviously going to argue, my client is pregnant, she had no prior criminal history, she should be let out. So that was what they tried to have happen in court. That did not happen.
So in other words, bail denied. Again. For a second time, her attorney, Ari Williams, asked the court to reconsider bond. The defense cited two primary factors. Number one, that Quadajah Johnson is currently pregnant. And number two, she has no prior criminal history, aside from a single misdemeanor offense that happened about 10 years ago. Despite those arguments, though, the judge denied bail once again. And perhaps most importantly, Quadajah Johnson has now been indicted on first-degree murder charges. That detail matters a lot. Because once a grand jury returns an indictment, the case officially moves into a posture where the state is signaling confidence in the strength of its evidence. The judge has also confirmed that this case is now headed for trial. So let's pause right there for a sec and talk about what kind of hearing this actually was. A status hearing is largely procedural. It's not a trial, it's not a bond hearing where new evidence is debated in depth, and it's not a plea negotiation forum. The purpose of the status hearing was to answer very basic questions like, where are we in this case? Has discovery begun or has it been exchanged? Are motions pending? And there was one motion that I'll get into in a minute, made by the defense. Are both sides prepared for the next phase? And do we need to set deadlines for future court dates? Well, I'll let you know now that a future court date has been scheduled for January 7th, 2026. So think of this status hearing as more of a checkpoint, if you will, not a turning point. The judge is essentially just checking the status of the case. He won't be deciding guilt or innocence at this point, and he won't be weighing mitigation the way we may see later. So when people hear that bond for Quadajah Johnson was denied again, it's important to understand that the court's not reassessing everything from scratch. No, it's not at a status hearing. The judge is looking at the charges, the indictment, prior rulings, and any risk factors that have already been identified. And right now, the charge is still first-degree murder. The court is essentially saying a grand jury has found probable cause that this crime did occur and that the defendant committed it. At that point, the threshold for bond becomes extremely high. So the denial of bail here is not at all unusual. It's actually procedural, and it's consistent with how courts handle capital level charges. A lot of us were speculating whether or not a plea deal would come up. Well, it did not. So let's talk about that. Why didn't Attorney Williams seek second-degree murder or manslaughter charges? At this stage, the state has no incentive to negotiate. A plea deal is about leverage, and right now the leverage sits almost entirely with the prosecution. A grand jury indictment has already been secured. From the prosecution's perspective, they haven't lost anything yet. But it's not that a plea deal is impossible somewhere down the line. Unless there are extraordinary circumstances, and I'm sorry, but legally speaking, pregnancy alone is not considered extraordinary. So what can we expect to happen at the next court date on January 7th? Well, the likelihood of Quadajah Johnson being released on bail isn't one of them, unless new evidence emerges, charges are reduced, or if there's a successful motion that alters the case risk analysis. The defense's most critical work will happen outside of the courtroom. Her legal team is going to be reviewing the discovery line by line. They'll be preparing pretrial motions, assessing witness statements, identifying constitutional issues, and they'll be evaluating forensic evidence. And it's important that I mention here that the prosecution requested a DNA sample from Quadajah, to which her attorney did not object. It's been reported that Holly's attorney filed a pretrial motion a day before the status hearing, and it had to do with a HIPAA violation. At first glance, a HIPAA violation seems completely unrelated to a first-degree murder prosecution, right? But Holly's medical information, specifically her pregnancy status, was leaked to the public prior to Holly disclosing that information herself. Well, the judge's response was essentially, this has no bearing on the case and you need to take that up with the medical facility. And that was legally correct. So why file it at all? I believe that there are strategic reasons to raise an issue like this, even knowing it's unlikely to change the criminal case. Because what that does is it creates a record for the defendant, first of all. And one of a defense attorney's primary duties is to preserve issues of record. So even when a motion is denied, it becomes part of the court file. And that matters later on for appellate review or claims of prejudice or unfair treatment in this case. So by filing the motion, Attorney Williams ensured that there is now official documentation. And that doesn't help with guilt or innocence, but it does protect the client's rights in the long term. And this could also be an attempt to frame the defendant as vulnerable instead of not dangerous. Information leaks like this during the pretrial could also lead to a jury being sequestered. We don't know what all Attorney Williams has up her sleeve, so we'll just have to stay tuned. So I want to close with this. The state of Illinois versus Quadajah Johnson case is now in its most serious phase, and we could be in for a long ride if this case actually makes it all the way to trial. That is, if a plea deal doesn't come into play. Now, as for Quadajah, she'll have to remain behind bars as this case unfolds. She has a long legal road ahead, and this case will be decided by evidence, not sympathy, and certainly not by public opinion. As always, I'll continue to follow the facts and update you as things develop. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone else who may be interested in this story. Make sure you're subscribed and leave a comment down below letting me know your thoughts about this case. Meet me in the comments. We can continue the conversation there.